Hi guys, we're back again and it's another review. I suppose I sort of apologise for that because I'm waiting to get on with some projects, but this was waiting in the wings and I thought I'd get on with it. So just a quick intro. This is primarily a review of an ultrasonic cleaner, but along with that I had a couple of things added in, which I'll show you before we go to that cleaner. This is a magnetic, it's rather like an oversized fridge magnet, but it's got little squares engraved on it or printed on it. Very useful for organising very small screws when you're dismantling something, particularly, I mean literally very small screws. And then the other thing was, which we looked at also, was this magic wrench. It's one of these sort of all-in-one things that serves a lot of purposes. I, like most people, like the right size wrench for the right size bolt or nut, but there are times when one tool will do lots of things and it's very convenient. So I show you that, basically just trying to undo one bolt which had a very seized nut. This covers a large range of size. It's very handy. I did mention, hang on, I always try and include prices. The little, what's it called again? The little screw pad, that's $3. Very reasonable. The wrench is $22.79, which seems fairly expensive, but on the other hand it's basically built like a brick latrine. It's extremely strong. I wouldn't say I've taken it to the absolute limit, but it's worth a look. If all you had with you somewhere was this, it would probably do a pretty good job. And then the main thing, the ultrasonic cleaner. My God, my brain's going. Pretty good unit. Quite pleased with that. Probably the best of all, which came out in the tests, was getting rid of some rusty, or improving some rusty bolts. Pretty damn good. And I was using homemade cleaning solution, and like as not, if you spent a bit of extra money and got some professionally made formulae, you'd probably get even better results, but for what I did, pretty darn good. That, which I mentioned the price somewhere, $68.99. So not a bad price actually for something like this. Very useful addition to the shop. Maybe a larger capacity tank would suit some people better, but most of the time I think we're dealing with fairly small parts, getting them cleaned up. And if you've got something really huge, well, you'll have to go and get it done elsewhere, I expect. So that's it, just a quick review. Loads of projects. I don't know how I'm going to get round to everything. And we've had some extreme heat. Other people will have experienced the same. Quite ridiculous, no use trying to work out here. So anyway, we'll hope for some fresher weather and get on with some chip making, hopefully. There you go, hope you enjoy the review. And it was a bit disjointed in places because I did it in little chunks. So hopefully it makes enough sense for you. Okay, bye for now. Before I look at the main item today, which is the ultrasonic cleaner, a couple of things to look at first. This was sent along with the other things. It's called the Wow Pad, and the idea of this basically is if you're taking apart really small stuff. I've got some small screws here. I'm just going to lay them out on this grid. Now this is basically an oversized fridge magnet, and it's got a grid printed on it, and the idea is basically if you're working with very small screws, if you were taking apart some electronics, you can put your screws out on this grid and give them a sort of position to remind you which order to put them back on. These screws are not particularly small compared with what you might find, certainly with things like clocks and cameras. You're going to get really small stuff. It's quite a good idea. As I say, it's a large fridge magnet, but the grid pattern does make it quite useful. And it's actually called the screw pad. And I don't know whether these, or those, depending whether you've got stainless or not, depends whether they'll grip. So I think that was a stainless, and so was that. These other ones seem to be staying put. Quite useful. Just a small $3 accessory, which I'm starting off with. Now the next item here is the magic wrench, which sells for $22.79, and I'll show you the web page for that, and also the web page for the last one, if I remember to put it in. This is pretty tough. I haven't tried it yet, so what we're going to do is see if it'll work to get a couple of nuts off some bolts that are rusted to heck, seized up. It's one of these multi sort of ideas where you've got different sizes in one end, different sizes in another. This is 5/16 to 15/16. This end is 15/16 to 1 3/4. Now multi-tools are okay if they're all you've got. Most people probably like a specific wrench, but this could well be useful, so we'll try it out and see what it shapes up as. You can probably see this is a bit like, what do we normally call it? I can't remember now. A pipe wrench. Similar idea to a pipe wrench. And the way the teeth go, it's gripping in several spots. Now I've got a smaller bolt. We'll try that and see if it's tight or not. Now this one's had some release agent, and that's pretty solid, so we're going to have to fight this one. And I say, this vice stand is not very strong or steady. Right, I put some pretty hefty torque on here, and I think it's going to move. Oh God, that is tight. Let's try and go back the other way. There's a bit of marking on the nut. Now try and tighten it. I'm putting a lot of force on this, and I say it is marking the nut a little bit, but if you really pushed and you can't get leverage from something else, there we go. I was putting a lot of force on that. Wow, That was a better test than the last one. This has actually been frozen with rust probably for about 20 or 30 years. So as I say, although there's a certain amount of marking on the nut, if something was seized like this one, I guess the right size socket would be good with a cheetah bar. But if this is all you've got, I think you're going to be doing pretty well. Now this one likewise has been rusted up for a long time. This is more like a jam nut actually. I'll put a bit of release on there and see what it's like. And it's moving. Not quite as tight as that last one. Here it's going. And let's see if we can get it to come off. Oh yes, that's freeing up. Well, that was easier than I expected. That's quite impressive. So anyway, the beauty of this is if it's all you got, it'll suit a lot of purposes. It's all laminated sections. You can probably see that's riveted. Same with the body. Laminated and riveted. So not bad. Quite a useful tool, I think. Now onto the main item, the Ultrasonic Cleaner. There's a bit of glare there, I'm afraid. Can't help that. You can see me reflected in the outside material, which seems to be a sort of dimpled stainless. Quite a nice finish. This is a 2-litre tank version. We'll come to that in a minute. There are two main control areas. We've got temperature and time. Temperature on off, timing for the ultrasonic on off, plus and minus. The temperature will rise, the rise will show in the display as it picks up, and they recommend a temperature of somewhere around 40 degrees C. It will go up to 80, but 40 to 50 seemingly is about the best area. Time altogether 1 to 99 minutes, but they don't recommend a really long session on that. It shouldn't be necessary, and it's not a good idea to go on for a really long time. Let's put the power on. Now of course we've got frequency flicker here, so you're going to find it difficult to see the display, I'm afraid. This is starting off at 24, and the tank is empty at the moment, and it defaults to 3 minutes to begin. Now Gearbest gives you, they also include a manual which is multi-language. Tells you about all you need to know. The range of models, this is a 2-litre, does go up to, I think there's one huge one, about 27 litre, and I don't know whether Gearbest keeps the bigger ones, but this 2-litre is probably adequate for a lot of smaller work. So let's get the tank filled, and we'll try and see what it can do. Right, you get a wire basket for putting your parts in, and it's recommended to always use that. It's a stainless tank, and there's a lid for it for when you're actually using it. So this is sort of anti-splash, really. I would say. There's a fill line. You might just about see it, and they recommend, pretty obviously, that you always cover the parts that you're dealing with. And then we've got the situation of what do we use as a cleaning solution. Well, there's a lot of choice in my mind. You can buy proprietary cleaning solutions, but for most purposes you will probably find that the water, when it's heated up to 40 or 50, maybe even 60 actually, dish soap solution is probably going to be quite adequate for some things. And I've got some rusty bolts which we'll try later on, and probably add some crud cutter to that and see how we get on. Right, we've got some solution in here. It's about half full, which will do for the first test items. They do say, which is pretty obvious I would think, is don't use this without liquid in the tank. It's up to 47 degrees now. When you set the plus and minus on the temperature, the plus sets you the max that you're choosing and it flashes, and then it settles back to what it actually is. So it gradually creeps up. Now the obvious thing with this, to save time, is to preheat some water. Would say perhaps microwave some, or use a pan and get it up to what would we say, more than lukewarm, but you could certainly accelerate the heat up time. Now the first items I'm going to try, I've got some, this is not specifically what you'd be doing in the shop, but some of my wife's jewellery, and there's one necklace here which is very needy of a clean. So we'll put the tray in there. Oh, and there's a ring, little ring as well. Now the very fine chains are a bit problematic because they fall through the mesh. Steve Jordan reviewed another make from another source, and it actually had a plastic bridge that would help support things. Anyway, we're going to try this, and we're setting for 5 minutes, and the thicker chain is heavily discoloured, so we'll see what happens. And this is dish soap solution. Right, this looks quite encouraging. I'll just have to mop the drips off the bottom. You can't see what I'm doing here. Now the ring, no idea about focus here, the ring looks pretty good. The one of the fine chains, if I can get it out, looks good. Sorry, you won't be able to see the detail on this. That's the other fine chain. Can't even see, yeah, it's in frame now. That looks good. Now the main thing I'm interested in is this large, much heavier chain, and this is supposed to be sterling silver, and some areas look a little bit discoloured, so we'll give it another, just this one, we'll give that another 5 minutes and take another look when that's finished. Right, well, it's done a pretty good job. I did notice that this chain has got a little bit of discoloration, which might be a plated, but the bit of dirt that was in it has gone, so that's pretty good for that. So now we'll move on to something a bit more shop oriented. And I've put a little more water in. Temperature's down to 47, but put the heater on, bring it up a bit. Now this, I don't know how well this is going to work, because this probably my favourite India stone. It is so clogged with oil and probably minute metal particles. We're going to put that in. And one of my other favourite ones, and I can't find half of them of course, this triangle, also in a very bad state, and then a smaller triangle which actually hasn't had a lot of use. There's a little bit of discoloration, so I've no idea whether we're staying sharp here. I'm sorry if it isn't. I'll put that in as well. Now the chances are this will take quite a lot of time, so I'm not sure what results we'll get. Again, Steve Jordan, on the one he was reviewing, he did his oil stones and seemed to get some quite good results. I've added some more dish soap. Temperature's just creeping up, it's 48. Excuse me. I'm just going to add in, the target temperature now is 60. I'm going to give it 5 minutes and then probably do another 5, so we'll see how we go. Well, it's starting to have an effect, and this one was so utterly horrible, so it's probably going to need another 5, maybe another 10 minutes. But it's working on it, which is good. The water's pretty filthy. I'll use this water one more time, and then I've got some preheated which I'll put in fresh. Right, that's 10 minutes. And I think we'll just brush this a bit, seeing as everything is loosening. Certainly quite a lot of, it's very hard to show all of this, I'm afraid. It's just stuff that's already loosening. I probably could change the water, but I think it'll do for one more go. So we're going to give another 5 minutes and see if that's adequate. It's certainly having one heck of an effect, which is very nice to see. Well, that's 15 minutes, and this area is beginning to clean a lot. This has not been properly cleaned up for almost decades. All I used to do was wipe it with some acetone, and we've still got some very resistant muck on the ends, and I think with time I would probably give this at least another 10 minutes. But the point is, it's cutting through. And the other thing which I'd probably have done, there's the larger triangle. That's looking quite a lot better. And the little triangle which hadn't got much dirt on it, that's nice and clean. But what I would tend to do, I think, is to use a very aggressive detergent. Dish soap is only good for a certain degree of cleaning, and I think probably washing machine soap or some much stronger detergent would speed things up. But quite pleased with that. And the water, let me put the basket out of the way. The water is pretty nasty. So I'm going to clean it out, put in some fresh water, and then I'm going to try a bit of rusty bolt treatment. Oh, there's some crud in the bottom. I've just poured out pretty dirty water, so it certainly shifted quite a bit of crud. The next thing I'm going to try is some rusty old bolts, nuts. I've actually got almost hundreds of these. They're quarter BSF. And maybe I ought to get a new quarter BSF tap and I could use some of these. Anyway, I've got some fresh water in there, and I'm going to add a fairly good measure of crud cutter, which should help with the rust removal, hopefully. We'll see. We're going to give this a 10-minute run. It's actually up to 62 degrees, so I want plenty of heat on this. Now, as I mentioned, I've added a fairly good dose of crud cutter, and it's quite a strong solution of dish soap. So give it 10 minutes and we'll take a look and see what happens. These are pretty damn rusty. What I'm hoping is that whilst a soak in Evaporust, for instance, or crud cutter would do quite well, I'm hoping that this actually gets into the threads slightly better, which is quite important. Here we are, 10 minutes. 5 might have been enough, but I don't think so. 10 minutes, in fact the temperature got up to 65, so water's quite hot. But really, that's pretty good. Pretty good. This, hang on. This large bolt, the head has still got a bit of rust on it. I dare say that could do with a bit of a soak. But look at the threads, and let's see if I can get that to show. Look at those threads, they were full of crud. That's nice. And the other ones, let me try and show you. That's one of the other nuts. And the internal thread, that's another thing that counts with nuts, is getting that clean. And this long one, pretty nice. I give it full marks for that. And the water, it's pretty nasty. So to sum up, very useful little machine. The 2-litre capacity is adequate for quite a lot. I dare say obviously for larger stuff you need a bigger unit, and I'm not sure whether Gearbest stocks the bigger ones. I haven't done a search. The next size up from the 2-litre, we go to a 3 and a 4 and a 6 and a 9 all the way up to 27. So I'm not sure where you'd get those, but for a general purpose shop unit, very useful. So what have we done? We've done jewellery, and my wife had a look at those and was well pleased with them. She could see the difference better than I could, actually. And then we did the Norton stones, and the big one needs further work on it. I think it'll probably need a bit more degreasing with acetone, and then we'll put it back in here probably for another 5 or 10 minutes. Finally, the rusted bolts. 10 minutes at 60 plus degrees C. Good result, very good result. Probably the best of all. I think I remember rightly the transducer runs at 40 kilohertz. It certainly seems to do the job. Oh, and finally, this one came with the Euro plug, and this unit is a 220-240 volt. And I did notice on the web page there's an option for a US power plug, but then I'm not sure whether that would mean it's 110 volt. Of course, you can convert these to a US plug, but then that's not going to be any good for a 220-240 volt like this. Having said that, if you look on the web, you will find a step up, which is 110 to 220 for a fairly modest price, rated at 300 watts. I couldn't find one on Gearbest. I did find one on another site. So 220 volt rating is not in itself a major problem if there isn't 110. Otherwise, excellent. I've got two lots of high voltage in here. I've got the 220, which is on the main system, and then I've also got a auto transformer which I've had for years, which pushes up to 220, 240, and that supplies several places in the shop. And that's it. That's it. Hope you enjoyed seeing this little fella. Thanks for watching.